On April 20th, 2010, the Deepwater Horizon disaster changed the lives of millions living near the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the scientists who responded to the crisis. These are some of their stories, intimate portraits of research, innovation, discovery. Welcome, I'm Jim McNamee, editor of Dispatches from the Gulf, a series of documentaries, short videos, and podcasts. Today, we hear from Dr. Samantha Joye, professor of marine sciences at the University of Georgia in Athens. Dr. Joye is one of the scientists at the forefront of answering the question, where did all that oil go?
I'm a microbial geochemist. That means that I study microorganisms, the little tiny organisms that you need a microscope to visualize. You can think of them as these little microbial worker bees that live in the ocean, and they carry out critical processes that make the ocean function and keep the ocean healthy. Every dive I've learned or seen something new that I didn't know before. We've discovered processes and organisms and microorganisms that are new to science. I mean, good grief, how incredible is that your job is to discover things that no one's ever seen before.
Dr. Joye conducts her research around natural oil seeps in the seafloor of the Gulf of Mexico. Years spent researching these natural seeps have made Joye uniquely qualified to understand how the Gulf might react to the Deepwater Horizon spill.
These natural seeps are incredibly diverse and they're teeming with life. Every single dive is filled with wows and ahas and holy cows and can you believe that? Oh my God, look at this, look at that. The bad aha moment was when we really started looking hard at some of the animals. We saw oiled and dead corals. We saw oiled and dead sea fans. All the filter feeding organisms were clearly impacted by the sedimented oil. A sea fan that's a few feet tall could be 500 years old and happily surviving and is now covered in brown slime and is dead. These organisms who filter feed and who are not selective feeders, they're not going to spit the oil out. They're going to just filter whatever comes past them. They're being damaged. We saw 2 crabs, both of which had the darkened carapaces, and they all were just covered in these barnacles. And when we brought that crab up, and we picked some of the barnacles off and looked at them under the microscope, and their guts were filled with this orangey, oily-looking residue. That, to me, was a very just sort of somber message.
Despite the devastation Joye has seen underwater since the oil spill, she certainly doesn't think all hope is lost for the Gulf of Mexico or its microbial worker bees.
I think in many aspects, the Gulf is certainly resilient and it has responded incredibly to this very, very large and significant perturbation. But I do believe that there are things that we don't know the answer to yet.
Dr. Joye also embraces the growing role of the modern scientists, and she hopes to inspire her students, along with the next generation of young people, and especially young women, to become scientists.
You've got to be a science communicator, you've got to be a science advocate, you've got to be a science educator, and you've got to go outside the classroom, and you've got to work with kids, and you've got to work with adults, and you've got to teach them about how the ocean and the Earth system is changing.
Today, thousands of scientists, oceanographers, chemists, engineers, biologists are all working together to develop newer and better ways to understand and ease the impact of oil spills. To learn more about their work, visit our webpage at dispatchesfromthegulf.com. Funding for this podcast was provided by a grant by the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative. And thanks for listening.